Hello.
Hello. So, 2 years ago, I was kidnapped by these 5 artists here, Kopo, Johannes, Anne, and Elizabeth. Soon enough, I developed Stockholm Syndrome, and I decided to stick with them. And together, we created the Leaving Home Function project. The purpose of this project was to leave behind our comfort zone, the privacy of our studios, and to go out there to see the world through our own eyes. We chose the longest way east to reach the west. We went through some very remote areas to some overdeveloped regions. This took around 40,000 kilometers, a bit over, and we wanted to move slowly. To make sure that we would move slowly, we chose this beautiful vehicle. The Ural 650 is no longer produced. It's very well known through all ex-Soviet regions, mainly because of its breakdowns. It has a very dark sense of humor, but we wanted to use it to get closer to the locals. For us, the breakdown was essentially a key to communication. So we packed our sidecars and we headed for New York.
In July 2014, I made my driver's license for motorcycles. Just 2 months later, we took off. And only 6,000 kilometers later, just as we had crossed the Caucasian Mountains, my motorcycle was already a total write-off. So since I'm neither a mechanic nor a motorcyclist, at this point, I'm totally thrown back to my simplest devices to understand what just happened. So the motorcycle was basically bursting out in the sudden and dragging me from the left to the right throughout a course of about 500 meters. And you have to imagine the motorcycle you just saw weighs about half a ton at least, fully loaded. So we start reading the signs piece by piece and step by step. We move on. We take down the cylinder heads, we take down the cylinders. Gearbox undergoes inspection until we can finally indicate it's a broken crankshaft. And this looks something like this. And it's not supposed to be bent on the left side. We have had a couple of minor breakdowns before, which we were able to fix. But what my motorcycle needs now, basically, is a heart transplant. And I know, unfortunately, by the top of my head, that we don't carry another spare heart just like that with us. So I hope that the others wouldn't abandon me and the broken bike right on the spot.
We didn't.
Thank you.
This was our first major mechanical breakdown. It was the first time that we seriously had to question ourselves, is this journey over? Like, what does New York even mean right now? This is very far away. We have a very fuzzy picture of it. What we did have in front of us was a milestone. We were in Russia, and perhaps you've also seen or heard about this. Movies show you about how people get attacked by the Russian mafia. YouTube is full with drunk drivers. This is the information we had. But what we're actually looking at is a logical breakdown, like a problem with the machine. A lot of people piling up on the side of the road, asking if they can help us out. Someone drives us to the next settlement, to the local mechanic. We meet Leonid, who is luckily an expert in Ural 650. He gives us a free lesson in how to fix a crankshaft. He offers us a place to stay for the night, the chance to take a shower, which is appreciated when you're on the road. And with a new confidence in how to fix, and with a really nice story of what people are like in Russia, we pack our sidecars and we continue for New York.
Okay, now I feel prepared, but I secretly hope that we don't ever have to apply our crankshaft skills again. 3,000 kilometers and 92 breakdowns later in the north of Kazakhstan, and crankshaft number 2 slaps us right into our faces. Well, luckily it's not me this time, and as it happens, Local bikers pick us up, bring us to their clubhouse, and we're ready to take another engine apart. Unexpectedly, next morning, migration police stands in front of the door and wants to see our documents. Okay, this is basically no problem because we have 5 valid visas, we have registered at the port of entry, and we haven't overstayed our visa time yet. Well, soon enough, both of them are signaling that we're in deep trouble because they have discovered that Elizabeth and me are missing another stamp in our visa document, which is supposed to mark us registered in their country. Still, I have difficulties taking the 2 officers seriously until we find ourselves just 2 days later in front of court facing a whole trial.
So we were quite confident by now to use a Russian hammer and to fix a crankshaft. So we were not really expecting to run into a bureaucratical breakdown. Like, we had followed all the logical steps. We knew that this kind of social construct is there to keep everything in logical order. And we really had difficulties taking the whole situation seriously. We thought it was a joke. And it was totally not clear. Like, you go in front of court, people are speaking different languages to you, you have no chance to defend yourself. If we had not met bikers in Kazakhstan who, again, they found us funny with the Urals and who empathized with us, maybe we would have not found a translator and a lawyer. But luckily we did, thanks to them. And soon enough, we were in front of court presenting our international project of trying to go to New York to the judge in Kazakhstan. This was a good point of discussion. He was quite impressed, I think. And he thought that the girls are probably honest girls and nice girls. And since they're artists, maybe they should also make him a painting. And he let them go on their way. So we try to let go of the border guard's mistake and this interesting judge. We make sure to double check our visa papers the next time that we reach a border, and we continue going to New York.
9,000 kilometers, 225 breakdowns later, we reach the far east of Russia. Here I feel really confident since bureaucracy is basically non-existent. So the conditions lying ahead, you have to imagine there are no roads at some point. There are no shops, there are no gas stations, there's no civilization, there's no phone signal. So basically, there's nothing except from some tracks through the bushes and icy rivers and a whole army of mosquitoes ready to make us an end. So through this kind of territory, we're moving on to finally discover that we're heavily underprepared. At day 4, we start rationing our food. At day 7, we run completely out of food, still having 80 kilometers of wilderness ahead of us. Still, we want to move on and don't leave our bikes behind, so we keep dragging them through one ice-cold river after the other. To do so, first one person has to cross the river with a pulley system and a rope and install it somewhere in the bushes on the other side. Then 4 times, we're draining oil and gas from the motorcycles. 4 times, we're emptying the whole sidecars. 4 times, we pull and push half a ton of motorcycle and luggage across the water. This always takes us 24 hours. At day 8, another river crossing. We're completely exhausted and weakened from hunger, still going on and not ready to abandon our bikes yet until the very end. At day 10, all of this becomes totally irrelevant since our petrol resources have come to an end. Finally, we leave behind all the motorcycles and keep walking towards New York.
Yeah, we luckily didn't have to walk the next 20,000 kilometers. As soon as we walked into the next settlement with a petrol canister in each hand, like, the locals knew that these so-called Germans with their Ural motorcycles, they look quite funny, not the typical tourist. Maybe we should help them out. So soon enough, we were making plans with our new friends, and we went back to recover the bikes. So what we had now was not to deal with the mechanical logic, the logic of the Ural, or the logic or irrational a factor of a bureaucratical system, but we really had to deal with the uncompromising logic of nature and with our own physical weakness. It was really important to realize what each person's strengths and weaknesses are within the group to make solution finding as efficient as possible and to let go of this idea that, okay, I'm really hungry now. Because it was not really an option to set up camp there and pick blueberries for the rest of our lives, like our parents wanted to see us at some point also. So, with a completely new understanding of what remote areas mean and what teamwork should function like, we packed our sidecars again and we tried to get to New York.
25,000 kilometers and 430 breakdowns after having left Halle-Saale, roads simply end in the furthest east of Russia. So now our journey was not anymore about going on the landway, basically. Instead, we decide to go further on the waterway to New York. To do so, we invent a most basic propeller construction, which actually can be driven by the motorcycle's own engine. And with the help of 8 inflatable pontoons, we built a mega float and simply make our motorcycle swim. Simply. So, of course, we had done some quite intense research before going on one of the biggest rivers in Russia, 1,600 kilometers down towards the Arctic Ocean, because it was not quite our plan to get killed over here. So what we're facing now on the river are basically huge tree trunks floating on the water, a lot of sand benches basically appearing out of nowhere, and side currents that could make you easily strand. So navigating this whole thing was quite a new challenge for us. So you have to imagine you have 2 bikes on the right side and 2 bikes on the left side, and it works basically like a tank. So if you accelerate on the right side, you would turn left and the other way around. But the one big difference is that we're trying to steer here one vehicle with 4 motorcycles. So at one point, we decide we need a captain. So one of the group stands in the very front of our float, giving instructions on which side to accelerate and which side to slow down, and would yell at you in the next moment that there's a sand bench ahead and we have to pass it on its left side. Otherwise, we are going to hit it. And so turn gas on. What are you waiting for? Turn the gas up, turn the gas up. At this moment, we already hit the sand bench and get stuck in the middle of the freaking river. I feel somehow it's not my decision anymore where I want to go, but somehow we are going to New York.
We were quite comfortable by now with all of our mechanical problems and our bureaucratical problems, and we thought we know how to work together and how to adapt quite fast to landscape conditions. So we were really not expecting that things would turn out like this. We were used to driving individually before. You have to imagine that having a helmet over your head is the only sense of privacy that you get. It's like your own room. But now helmets are off. All we have is these beautiful life vests. And we are all trapped together in this really small space for 1 month. There is no possibility of stepping off of the float. There is no door. There is no floor. There's just a really strong current. Like, you have to stick together. You have to figure out a way that 4 brains are functioning as one organism now. And it really takes a lot of effort to realize that this captain in the front, he is not yelling at me because I did something wrong. He's yelling because if I don't start the engine, we will probably hit the sand bench, or we can rip the float in 2 and each person floats his own way down the Arctic Ocean. And that was not really an option, I guess. So with a new understanding of what privacy means in this sense, we put our sidecars back on wheels and we headed for New York.
Finally, back on solid ground, we enter a military zone in the remoteness of Russia. Now there are just 1,200 kilometers of plain tundra and 150 rivers separating us from Bering Strait. 21 days of visa time are left, so we know we have to hurry in order to cross all these rivers. So therefore, we built a ferry boat construction out of our remaining pontoons and some scrap metal, which we found on the way, and try to make it more efficient crossing the rivers. Also, we make a deal with the local truckers, so we arrange for 800 liters of gas in 4 barrels like this, and they would drop them off along the way towards Bering Strait. Last but not least, thanks to the never-ending resources of the Russian military, we're also very well stocked with food and spare parts, and somehow with camouflage underwear. 13 days of visa time left and heavy rain starts falling. Within a couple of hours, the whole settlement is flooded and the officials call out the state of emergency and close down the whole place. Days and days pass and our mood is constantly dropping until we finally can leave. Off into the wilderness we go. 200 kilometers and 1 broken clutch later, we're trapped in the middle of the tundra at the very end of the world. Finally, we give out a final SOS call and having the Russian military rescuing us.
We were like this close to Bering Strait. This was the closest we could get. And it was really frustrating to see that, okay, we had all these breakdowns so far, and we could overcome them one by one, but suddenly everything is piling up. And at some point, you have to accept that there is a border. Like, this is exactly what we wanted to do, go out there and realize what our own borders are. And we found it at this point. But you have a choice. You can always sink, pack your bags, and go home, or crawl into a hole. Or you can keep trying to go to New York. Like, there was a lot of people that wanted to see us there. We met a lot of people along the way. And at that point, we also wanted to get there. So we put our sidecars in containers. If someone is interested in going to Bering Strait, you can talk with us later, maybe. We put ourselves on a plane and we flew to Alaska because we were going to New York.
Mm-hmm. January 10th. January 10th, 2017, and we'll make our final steps into New York on the landway. And it seems to me that we are watching upon our arrival here just as disbelieving as the people in the streets are staring back at us. 45,000 kilometers on motorcycles, 2.5 years of constant fixing, and a hell of a ride later, we still don't see ourselves as mechanics. We still don't find that we are motorcyclists, neither we are therapists or bureaucrats. But what made us 5 go around the world in one piece is most of all the participation of all the people like Leonid, the master mechanic from Russia, or the Kazakh bikers. Because they supported, all of them, the idea of going out and exploring foreign territories in order to gain all this very vital first-hand information. Together with them, we made the effort to change and to shift our perspective towards all these breakdowns and face them thereby. So it's basically clear that New York, our final destination, is just the Kickstarter to go out and to collect all these milestones along the way. Because what we are now is confident that failing is exactly this process of collecting all those milestones along the way in order to keep away from failure. Thank you.